So Nina Turner was defeated today by Shonda Brown, who was in part greatly funded by the Israel lobby. In particular, Stacey Schusterman, who her father was a billionaire, multi-billionaire, and then he died in 2000, and she now, along with her mother, have billions, and she spends a lot of her time funding Israel enterprises and candidates, political candidates that are pro-Israel. And if she sees that a candidate is for Palestinian rights, then she tends to attack that candidate. She spent $1.25 million in this campaign, or smear campaign against Nina Turner. Oil and gas heir funding super PAC attacking Nina Turner. Samson's Energy heir has donated $1.25 million to the Democratic Majority for Israel super PAC, which endorsed Turner's opponent Shontel Brown, by Matthew Cunningham Cook, July 16, 2021. The largest donor to the super PAC, backing centrist Democratic candidate Shontel Brown in Ohio's 11th Congressional District special election, is an oil and gas executive who belongs to a billionaire family. Activists worry the donations could compromise Brown's support for progressive climate policy. You think? Stacey Schusterman, heir and chair of Samson's Energy, a fossil fuel company that owns at least 11 oil and gas wells in Wyoming, donated $1.55 million to Democratic Majority for Israel in 2019 and 2020, a super PAC that has in turn spent over $660,000 on ads supporting Brown and attacking her Democratic primary opponent, Nina Turner, according to an Intercept review of federal campaign finance records. Schusterman is the super PAC's largest individual donor. Schusterman's fortunes come from a much larger oil and gas business. Her father, Charles Schusterman, founded Samson Investment in 1971 in Tulsa, and the family owned it for 40 years until they sold it to the private equity megafirm Kohlberg Kravis Roberts for $7.2 billion in 2011, earning the family a huge windfall. Charles died in 2000. His wife and Stacey's mother, Lynn, is worth $3.4 billion. After the sale, Stacey Schusterman started the much smaller Samson Energy from her father's fortune, investing in oil wells in Louisiana, Texas, and Wyoming. The wells Samson Energy has drilled in Wyoming have been a source of controversy as they are very close to residential areas in Cheyenne, the state's largest city. She's been an avid supporter of DMFI Super PAC. The Super PAC, which formally endorsed Brown in February, has spent millions going after other progressive candidates in previous elections. The group spent $1.4 million attacking Senator Bernie Sanders in the 2020 presidential primary, and an additional $1.5 million during the election cycle to support the moderate Democrat Eliot Engel and attack his progressive challenger, Jamal Bowman. By the way, Jamal Bowman, I think I remember seeing a couple of years ago, that he supports Israel. He was quite proud of it. Bowman went on to win that election. Schusterman donated $250,000 to the Democratic Majority for Israel as the group was aggressively spending against Bowman, and $1 million in December 2019, right before they launched aggressive attack ads against Sanders. Her donations were not publicly available until after the primary. Schusterman donated an additional $300,000 to DMFI on December 18, 2020. While Democratic Majority for Israel describes itself as working to, quote, maintain and strengthen support for Israel among Democratic leaders, including presidential and congressional candidates, end quote, much of the group's ad spending has not focused on a candidate's support for Israel and has instead launched various attacks on candidates perceived to be more sympathetic to the Palestinian cause. Evan Weber, a spokesperson for the youth-driven climate organization Sunrise Movement, which has endorsed Turner, panned DMFI's role in the primary. Quote, DMFI has shown time and time again that it's nothing more than a front group for corporate big-moneyed interest who will go to any lengths to stop progressives, especially progressive women of color, from having more power in our society, unquote. Weber said, quote, Nina Turner is a backer of the Green New Deal and a signer of the No Fossil Fuel Money Pledge. Shontel Brown is getting backed by a super PAC loaded up with dirty oil and gas money. The choice for voters in Ohio's 11th district couldn't be more clear, end quote. Some of Brown's notable backers have deep ties to fossil fuel interests. Brown's most prominent supporter, House Majority Whip Jim Clyburn, which the Black Agenda Report refers to as the Black Misleadership class, received $228,000 from the electrical utility interests in 2019 and 2020, and $62,500 from oil and gas interests, according to Open Secrets. electrical utilities are still very fossil fuel heavy, with about 80% of U.S. electricity coming from fossil fuel sources. Another one of Brown's endorsers, newly minted Louisiana Republican Representative Troy Carter, was removed from the No Fossil Fuel Pledge website after he repeatedly accepted campaign contributions from fossil fuel interests. Hillary Clinton, who has also endorsed Brown, helped lead the push for shale gas whilst she was Secretary of State, according to Mother Jones. Representative Mark Veazey of Texas, another Brown endorser, was the fifth highest recipient of oil and gas money among congressional Democrats in 2019 and 2020. The Congressional Black Caucus PAC, which endorsed Brown on July 7th, has on its board Michael Williams and Al Wynn, who have worked as lobbyists for the petroleum and coal industries, respectively. The U.S. is helping Israel expand its borders and to continue on with the genocide of Palestinians and finally realize this state that they want, which is no Palestinians, basically. And, and also the Israel is continuing on the imperialist endeavors of the U.S. It's like a proxy, continuing on proxy wars in the Middle East. So there's a symbiotic relationship with Israel and that the U.S. has, and so Israel is very, very important to U.S. imperialism in the Middle East and gaining hegemony. That's what Stacey Schusterman is helping to continue on. She's helping to secure her own oil reserves by, helping U.S. imperialism continue in the Middle East and elsewhere. I'm sure she's looking forward to when the U.S. invades Venezuela, because they have large oil reserves. I'm sure she's looking forward to the day when the U.S. invades and bombs Iran, because they have large oil reserves as well. So she has a great interest in the continuation of this apartheid state in Israel, and she has a continuing interest in securing oil by, helping keep Israel, as she would see it, as healthy and the narrative healthy. And the U.S. continues to give military aid to Israel. So it's, she knows what to focus on to keep her business going well, oil and gas, and to also, and the way to help that is to make sure that Israel continues on its path of getting rid of Palestinians and then expanding its borders and also helping with proxy wars with the U.S. The point of this is, and this is the kind of very disturbing thing about this, is that mainly with her help, with Stacey Schusterman and this super PAC, the Democratic Majority for Israel, she was able to, at last minute great funding, able to smear Nina Turner to the point where she lost this election. She was the better candidate. As I've mentioned before, I'm not really into electoral politics. I think that the important work is outside of electoral politics. I don't think that if, as that saying goes, if voting could change anything, it would be made illegal. But, of course, in some ways, it could be a blessing in disguise that Nina Turner did not win this, because I think she was probably much better outside of that awful party. The Democratic Party is where social movements go to die. So I don't know. But then again, the more candidates you have that are remotely progressive, I guess in some ways that's a good thing too. But it's like, she's better probably than the rest of them in the so-called squad. I didn't consider those people progressive. Just recently they just said they didn't want to. They just okayed funding for some more military aid to Israel. Just recently, Bowman and Ro Khanna and Ayanna Presley and somebody else. Actually, somebody else from the squad. It wasn't AOC and it wasn't Cori Bush, I don't think. But they all just recently okayed more funding for Israel. So, for all the wringing of hands when Israel is committing genocide there and bombing the bejesus out of them as they did recently, they're just full of it, these so-called progressives. They say one thing in front of the cameras and then secretly they pass various bills or they don't force the vote and so on. But anyway, it's unfortunate. I mean, I don't know what Nina Turner would be like if she got into the Democratic Party. I think they would make it very difficult for her to do anything, and she may end up just acquiescing like AOC. Who knows? So in some ways it might be a blessing. But Nina Turner said after her concession speech today that she was going to make sure she never let this happen again, where dark money could interfere with the progressives' chances.
Progressives have to plan a little more. Well, you know what? We need more than progressives to try to get dark money out of politics. One of the things that I am very committed to doing is to work to make sure that this doesn't happen to any other progressive. So, y'all stay tuned. But see, this is not just about this district. What I want people to understand is that if they can do this here in the 11th Congressional District, they come into a neighborhood near you. So is this district today, what district will it be at another time where they don't like the candidate? There were 13 candidates in this primary, 13, and they only came after me. That should tell the voters of this district something. That the special interests fear the fact that they know if I had won this race, that they were going to be on notice for what they are doing to the people of this district, this state, and also this country. But you know what? My work continues, and I'm really excited about the opportunity for the next step in my journey. I competed for this. The voters had something else to say. It was compounded by dark money that only attacked me. That is a reality. But what I was fighting for is still a reality too. Healthcare, increasing the minimum wage, making sure people can unionize, making sure people can afford their prescription drugs. See, none of that changes. And that's why I count it all joy, because my journey continues. So I want you all to stand by.
Nina.
Because other things
Nina, one question. Let me ask you, Nina. How do progressives combat what you call the evil money for next time? Because you were up considerably, and then you had nearly $2 million came in from out of state. How can a progressive combat that going forward to not be smeared out of the race?
I want progressives to be very resolute, and I want us to keep on running because we are winning. I raised $6 million in this race. I was outperforming every other candidate in this race until that dark money came in, and I've raised more money individually. I think my race is a template for progressives in terms of how we raise that money. We got to get in, earlier. Not necessarily early, because this was a special election. We just got to plan a little more. This is not an indictment on our movement. This is an indictment on dark money. Progressives shouldn't feel bad, because until that evil money came in here, 35 points up, the only way they could have won is for dark money to come in here. We need real campaign finance reform in this country. It is a disservice to the voters to have special dark interests come in here and dictate who gets to win. If we let them win here, they're going to keep doing this kind of stuff all over the country. And so I am more committed to ensuring that that does not happen. So I'm going to work. I can't give it all away tonight, but Jordan, you will know what Sister Turner has in store.
2022 Senate, 2022 Senate. Portman's retiring.
I know Senator Portman is retiring. I'm not ruling out anything, but one thing I will tell you is I am going to work very hard to make sure that this does not happen to progressives, or at least if it happens to progressives, I want to make sure that they have more than a fighting chance to be able to win. Part of it is getting good money in early to help the progressive that's being attacked. That's what it is. There's money used for evil, and they made it very clear from the beginning of this race that it was going to be anybody but Nina, and they meant that. And as everybody can see, 13 candidates in the race, and I'm the only one that gets attacked. The only one. Other things were said too. One candidate in this race had a red box up. One, inviting that money in. So what I learned, there's several lessons that I learned from this race. One of them is when you have progressives running, good money has to come in to help them very, very early. I ran a very policy-driven race for a very long time, and I didn't start contrasting records until later in the race. So maybe that's a lesson. Maybe that's a lesson because I wanted to run a very Senator,
Now, I don't know how you can do that, and this is my point of this video. I don't know how you can do that because you cannot, until big money is out of politics, you cannot stop a group like Democratic Majority for Israel from interfering in any progressives' aims. I mean, this is the worry that this could happen again and again to any candidates. It doesn't have to be the Democratic Party. It could be any party. It looks like Stacey Schusterman is very dedicated to basically challenging any candidate that looks like they may support Palestinian rights, any candidate who is for a Green New Deal, because she is obviously against a Green New Deal because she wants her oil and gas business to flourish and continue on, and she can do that through the apartheid state of Israel with their meddling in the Middle East, and she can do that, the Zionists in the Democratic Party. Joe Biden is a full-on pro-Israel Zionist, so is Kamala Harris, and so many others in there as well. It's sort of it's a Zionist party, and so I don't see how they're going to be able to stop somebody like Stacey Schusterman and the DMFI from interfering in one progressive candidate after another. I mean, I can see that happening again when Nina Turner runs again. She might run in 2022. Isn't there something that she could run for? I think I heard somebody mention. They can do that all over again. And unfortunately, a lot of people who are just completely out of the loop, all they hear are these smeary advertisements against Nina Turner, and they don't know. People are quite uninformed, and they just kind of swallow the swamping of ads that are smearing candidates. And I find it head-scratchingly amazing that anybody would knock back someone who says they're for Medicare for all, someone who is probably wants to wipe out student debt, someone who is for a Green New Deal and all that kind of stuff. I mean, that's what she says, that's what she says, Nina Turner. So, it's absolutely sort of jaw-dropping to me that anybody would vote for Shonda Brown. Is it Shonda? Shonda Brown, because she's really weak, and I think she's even sort of got some corruption things happening there. And this is also something that I found ironic about Stacey Schusterman, saying that she wants, women. I don't know if she's only talking about Jewish women, but she wants women to have more of a prominence in the world. I suppose only the women she likes, and she wants safe spaces for women. I guess that's only the women she likes, only the women that will help prop up her industries or in some ways won't challenge anything that she believes in. So, so anyway, I do not know, unless you get big money out of politics, you're going to have this dark money being funneled through PACs and then just smear campaigns to a public who is not very informed about anything, and they just think, wow, well, she sounds awful, I'm going to go for this other one. I mean, that's, this happens in Australia. The Murdoch press, 75% of all the press, the written, the printed, the on-air, online, is owned by Murdoch in Australia, and so they are relentless in their hounding of anybody outside of the party that they have decided is the one that's going to bring them the most profits, and that is the Liberal National Party. And that's not what it sounds like. It's actually a neoconservative. It's a real unhinged, with a lot of authoritarian wannabes there, and fascists like Dutton, who I think one day is going to be Prime Minister of Australia. He's a scary personality. You'll hear it from me first. If in the next election, if there's a spill and Scott Morrison, the current Prime Minister, is taken out and is basically he's been replaced by Peter Dutton, then you know that I would wonder if there's some CIA involvement in that, because that's not the first time the CIA has meddled in Australian politics. And also Murdoch Press, they actually brag about choosing prime ministers for Australia, and it's not far-fetched. They swamp the airwaves and the print media with smears about everybody except for the the party that they're interested in, and it works. This propaganda campaign like that, it actually works. So if Peter Dutton is Prime Minister in 10 or so months, you know that it's got a lot to do with probably the Murdoch press and possibly even the CIA. I'm sure they would love to have a character like Peter Dutton as Prime Minister of Australia. He's a wannabe fascist. He's worse, much, much worse than Scott Morrison. So anyway, that's something to look forward to. And anyway, so unfortunately, Nina Turner, I don't know what she'll be able to do to address this dark money, this, Stacey Schusterman putting so much money into the Democratic Majority for Israel PAC. And that's what all they do. That's what the DMFI, this is what they do. They basically make sure that nobody who is sort of for Palestinian rights is going to get anywhere. Nobody who is against corporations is going to get anywhere. That's what that's why they're there, to keep corporations happy and to make sure that anybody who's remotely progressive doesn't get anywhere. So that's kind of frightening, and I honestly don't know how you could get around that. I mean, that's why capitalism has to end. I say this over and over again. That's why the duopoly is just one big party, and they put a lot of money into making sure that anybody who looks like they could be progressive is not going to get in. That's their whole raison d'etre for what they do. They make sure they keep their corporate overlords happy, and they get kickbacks from that. They get their pockets lined. Look at Nancy Pelosi, $200 million. You can't have that kind of money and not be a corrupt politician. They're all corrupt in one way or another. And so, one could see the silver lining in Nina Turner not ending up in that party, because maybe she'll do better. Maybe she'll do better things, more productive things, more important things outside of that awful, awful corporate party. And it would be great if she joined a socialist party of some kind. But I don't know. I don't think she's a socialist person. I don't know what her views are about socialism. But anyway, it's kind of depressing, because I can't imagine that anything can be done electorally if you've got this kind of thing going on. This is obvious. This is something that is happening globally now. Look at the Hasbro, the Israel lobby were actually openly rejoicing that they had managed to bring down Jeremy Corbyn with that ridiculous IHRA definition, which basically, if you're anti-Zionist, you're anti-Semitic. I mean, basically, Zionism is anti-Semitic. Zionism is racist. And so it's actually anti-Judaism, Zionism. That is the amazing thing. And so this IHRA definition is so ridiculous. If you are against apartheid Israel, you are deemed anti-Semitic under this new definition from the IHRA. So it's very unfortunate. And so, when these corporate media go on about foreign interference, foreign country interference, foreign government interference in politics in the United States, they never ever talk about Israel lobby like AIPAC and this DMFI. They never talk about that. They talk about Russia, and they talk about China, and they talk about all these different countries that are targets of the US, but they never ever mention Israel. And yet Israel is constantly meddling in US politics. They are almost, you could say, at the helm in many ways. They're at the helm of the Democratic Party. They're very, very prominent with GOP. And so, there's constant meddling by Israel. And look at the lawsuit that Abby Martin brought against Georgia University, where basically she was expected to sign a pledge to never criticize Israel if she wanted to do some work at Georgia University. And apparently there's a whole bunch of universities in the United States where if you want to do work for that university, you have to sign that pledge. And that's why she put that lawsuit together, and it was deemed unconstitutional. But people have signed that pledge. Imagine if that pledge said you have to never ever criticize Russia or never ever criticize China. I mean, imagine signing something like that, and yet it's seen as totally acceptable. So that is the real foreign interference in the US politics, is the Israel lobby, is Israel. This is the elephant in the room that will not be named by the corporate media and will not be named by politicians. But as that saying goes, you know who your masters are by those you are not allowed to criticize.